Hi. Hi. Well, okay, my microphone is now actually picking up very aggressively this time around, unlike the last few times. Hi, how you doing? Uh, it's the political commentary of the month on the last day. Because of course it is. I actually have no idea what the hell to talk about. Kind of as usual. This month I spent probably the least amount of time paying attention to anything, media or commentary or politics or anything like that. So I'm not entirely sure what to talk about. But we're going to talk about at least a little bit of things, just probably touch on things here and there, because there's a few things I have came across and did notice this month that I figured probably would be a good thing to talk about. So we're going to do that. Anyway, starting off, go figure, good old Bo Jiden, Resident Depp, he does all the typical things that you would expect a politician to do because they are fucking puppets. Their strings are constantly pulled. And of course, they're bought into their positions. They're never actually truly, votes don't truly count. They're just bought in by corporations and elites with special interests who control the world. But anyway, never story. Point is, he's proving that point consistently throughout his presidency, especially the last few months. One of the main feats is the fact that you have all these big, environmentalist groups and even some left-wing groups, again, usually associated with environment, that were always pushing for Joe Biden to be the guy elected because supposedly he's such a green-minded person. He wants to make sure he innovates and focuses on clean, green tech and minimizing waste and controlling greenhouse gas emissions and being tough on, tough on corporations and fossil fuel companies and all that stuff with, controlling their and regulating them and all that stuff, right? Controlling their emissions and all that. Well, to prove how committed he is to being tough on big mega corporations and conglomerates who own the world's oil fields and fracking operations, he goes and quickly and very proudly opens up a bunch of wildlands that are literally against nature preserves and national monuments in the Southwest, just like Trump did, to mining and fracking operations to make companies. In fact, they very quickly signed on with a company to, including, of course, with the EPA, violating their own supposed point of existence. They quickly went and signed off to a big corporation and mining company the rights to a massive swath of land on the edge of one of the nature preserves and national monuments down there. Who would have thought, right? Because, of course, Democrats, they never ever do that. They're such great environmentalists. He's such a great liberal. And he would never sell out. He's such a great person. After all, Orange Man bad. And here we have him doing exactly what Trump's already done. Trump did with Bears Ears. In this case, he's doing it with in his own way on the edge of it, up against this property line and more wildland that probably should be added to the preserve instead, selling it for fracking and mining operations. Pretty great. Who would have thought? It's kind of almost like, oh, that's right, Obama, who was supposedly such a great environmentalist politician, who literally, as soon as he had the opportunity, signed off on it, did everything he could to fight for Canada's major petrol company to go build those massive fucking pipelines and also open up fracking all over the fucking place. But no, nobody mentions that because that would be inconvenient to their narrative. Because it's only Republicans who do that. It's all so fucking stupid. I tell you. Of course, then you have the case in point in the fact of having the likes of Ron DeSantis, who is a well-known conservative Republican governor of Florida right now, that all the left likes to just despise and hate on all the time for all those different things he's done. Yet he's done two very good things recently. One, he banned the use and the requirement of vaccine passports of any kind within the state of Florida. So they're completely banned off, which is the good, smart thing to do and the right thing to do. And then two, as of yesterday, the 29th, actually I think it was the 28th that signed off on, of June 2021, good old Republican conservative governor Ron DeSantis, who left is supposed to despise, went and did something that is pretty much the polar opposite of what the left loves to scream the right always does, and the exact opposite of the thing I just expressed that Joe Biden's been doing. He actually signed off on an entire policy and fund and set of regulations that are focused on environment and land conservation, especially at the Florida Wildlife Corridor, let alone that of a lot of other important places in Florida, to restrict and to create sustainable development, whatever the fuck the sustainable thing is, no matter what part of the political spectrum you're on and what title you would claim to. Sustainable never usually is sustainable when it comes down to anything that's involving money. That includes development. But they signed off on that. And I guess apparently they took a massive chunk of their year-to-year expenditure and budget for the state and allocated to that. They already had a decent chunk, and now they took a fuckload more. I can't remember how big of a chunk it was. It was something huge that even these environmentalist-heavy states like Oregon or Washington or California have never put that much forward to their environments, ever. And Ron DeSantis goes and puts that much forward, and he's, you know, a good old Southern Republican conservative boy. And yet they wonder how you can go and trash talk them for their bullshit cliches they keep pushing about how it's only that, it's only them who are so evil and always so against the things that we're so for. Who would have thought, right? And again, these are probably the same people who have gotten Facebook with, in this case, Instagram, to the extent to where now they're siding with people reporting comments and replies to comments that do anything to say any mention of SJWs, especially if it's anything of any kind of criticism or joke towards them. They will literally side with the reporters and take down your comment and either suspend you or delete your entire fucking account with no opportunity to come back. Basically, you're banned. You're deleted and banned if you get reported enough, because it's apparently now a violation of their rules and guidelines to criticize SJWs. If enough people get offended and report your comment, then you violated guidelines, because it makes them look bad to SJWs. Same basic people who were making those reports and made these companies start doing that to suck up to them, I guarantee you the same ones who are those exact people that won't give that the light of day, will pretend that didn't happen because it's inconvenient to their narrative. It doesn't fit it, what they keep trying to push. Same people, I guarantee it. Or, I could talk about another thing, and we'll touch on that too. How about the whole trans athletes, right? Now, anybody with a brain that actually follows the science, as people say, right? It's a scientific fact, which doesn't exist, but a proven fact of biology, nonetheless, and it's been proven the longest time, is the fact that there's no such thing as gender fluidity, and there's no such thing as transgender. There's only male or female. Binary only. You can only be male or female. You can only have XY, I believe it is, or XX in the chromosomes. Either male or female. It's not respective, I don't think. I think I would have reversed that if that was respective. Anyway, I never remember that, but I just remember which one is which. I think it's XY that's supposed to be the female, and XX, I believe, is supposed to be the male. I think. Anyway. Point being, you can only be one or the other. Anybody with a brain and anybody who follows the science knows that is a fact that can't be broken. They've tried to break that so many times, especially within the last 10, 15 years, and they've always failed miserably, only to prove the exact opposite. The thing that's always been proven many times before, over and over again. And they're getting mad about it, of course, because it doesn't fit the current mainstream narrative and what they're bought and paid to push out. As gender fluidity exists, there's more than just binary. All lies. Anyway, so now that we got that point through, that means that no matter what you demand you are, or what you think you are, what you believe you are, and demand people consider you, you are not. You are only what you are born as. And therefore, if you are born as a dude, but claim to be trans, as in a female, you're a dude. It doesn't matter how much surgery you get, and how much hormone therapy you get, you are still a fucking dude. Nor how much hair you grow, or how long you grow it, you're still a dude. No matter how many implants you get, and removals, or reductions, you're still a dude. Same vice versa. That point said, right, so you have the whole trans athletes thing now, and the headlines going around right now isn't so much that, as it's specifically the whole world weightlifting tournament and championships, I guess, is what it is specifically. And they've allowed a dude who demands he's a woman in. And in practicing for it, his doctors told him you have to be out 6 to 10 weeks. His trainers. Why? Because he, who all the articles claim is a she, even though he's a he, suffered a testicle injury. That proves the fucking fact of how stupid it is that people actually support this concept that you can be something you think you are, but you know you're not. Everybody knows you're not. You're only what you're born as. This dude was a male when he was born. Therefore, he will always be a dude. And he had literally his own fucking body say, you know what? Fuck you, thinking you're a woman. Let me prove to you how much of a man you are. I'm gonna injure your fucking testicles. Because you can't have a testicle injury unless you're a fucking dude. That's obviously true. That shows how stupid this shit is. So they're saying, oh look, trans athlete, this trans woman suffered a terrible testicular injury in practicing for the weightlifting, the world weightlifting competition going on right now for championships. They're out 6 to 10 weeks with a testicle injury. So they're not a woman. That's not a she, that's a he. It's a dude. It's a guy. It's a male. It's a man. That's a fact. You can't get a testicular injury unless you're a goddamn dude. Like, how stupid do you have to insist to be to continue to argue, no, it's a woman because he says he is? Fuck you. Fucking delusional nut jobs out there, I swear to God. I've said this before about trans people, and I'll say it again. They don't exist because the fact is that they're just born as they are. Which means that what it really comes down to is anybody who's trans, or claims to be trans, or believes that that's a thing, is going through an identity crisis, which is a severe mental health crisis. They're very mentally off-kilter. They need help. They don't need support in the sense of, oh, let's support their decision to decide that they're actually something they're not. No. What you do is you get the mental help. You go get a specialist, which is exactly how we got to the point in the first place where the doctors and the people who should have learned how to figure what the hell is happening with these people who are clearly having a massive identity crisis, so a mental health crisis, they just bailed on the concept and the idea of trying to learn and figure out these people because it was so far outside of comprehension and so far outside of the realms of knowledge and understanding for the average person, including the doctors, that they're just like, fuck that, we're not going to research it, we're not going to get to know these people one-on-one and figure out where the hell the source of their identity crisis is. We're just going to instead go the easiest route, the laziest possible route, and be like, this is real, and we need to accept who they've become and who they think they is. No. That's not how anything works. That's called being a lazy asshole and just letting somebody have a massive mental health crisis and live in delusion for the rest of their lives because you're just fucking lazy and you don't want to put in the intensely infuriating and frustrating work it's going to take to learn and figure out and come to comprehend and understand how the fuck people get to that point. What faults there's going on in their brain, how they're miswired, how their wires are getting crisscrossed and turned around and frayed and fritzed and everything else. shorted, and then find that fucking source of their identity crisis, and then help them see it, and then help them figure out, therefore, how to fix it. Actually, how true homeopathy works in naturopathy. You find the source of the problem, which helps you. You're basically backtracing until you find the source, and you can confirm it, the cause, and then you work back forward again through it, so you can help step by step break it down, and thus get the person to be completely cured eventually of whatever their ailment or their problems are, their imbalances are. It's basically that exact form of it, except with mental health. You're trying to backtrack until you find the source of their identity crisis and their fault that's causing their identity crisis, to then help them fix themselves from this mental break from reality, and help them figure out and come to terms with who they are, rather than letting them go through an identity crisis, which allows them to live in complete delusion and confusion all the time, because of the fact that they think they're something they are. No, they are not. Everybody knows they're not. So that's the truth about trans people. You're just having an identity crisis. Like, it's just a fact. Not an opinion. But people love to pretend now, because it's very convenient and easy to do, and it makes you now very PC and very, very good person, apparently, and very caring, because you don't actually care, because you don't want to put in the effort to figure out where their identity crisis is coming from. That means you care, apparently. Cool, I guess. Anyway. Just shows the fucking stupidity of it. Like, you are what you're born as. You cannot be anything else. No matter how hard you try, no matter how many surgeries you go through, no matter how much hormone therapy you go through, you are what you are born as, period. End of fucking story. And that guy's body literally fucking proves that point. You can't be anything you demand you're not. You are what you are born as. You cannot not be that. Like, you can't go in there and be like, I'm a woman. And then everybody's like, okay, you're a woman then, because you think you are. And even though you have balls, and then you go try to lift weights, and you fucking herniate a testicle. But everybody's still demanding to call you she, because of the fact that you demand that they do that, because you demand you are one. When you clearly aren't, because you can't have a testicular injury of any kind, unless you happen to be a dude! So this fucking BS, man. They are broken mentally. They need some sort of they're having a crisis and they need help. Like, it's a fact. Though technically not a political commentary in this sense, I do want to also touch on the fact that we had record-breaking temperatures here in Oregon on Sunday and Monday, which, of course, was the 28th and the 27th of June 2021. The last time we had a record heat, in the Portland area that is, was 108 set in summer of 2009, which just so happened to be the very same day that we happened to be outdoors all day celebrating my sister's graduation party. So that was convenient. Yeah, it also was a harbinger of death kind of day too, because we got home, half our rodents were dead because of the heat. Then the next day, the other half of them died, and we only had, yeah, literally one rodent left, I believe, which was my Tuffin, who then later, in 2011, 2 years later, got perforated to death by a mad scientist who happens to still be alive at somewhere between 26 and 31 years of age, and a cat named Arthur, who now lives with my sister. Oh, culmination. Anyway. Oh man, let me tell you. So that was when the last record was set. So then 12 years later, obviously this year, a few days ago, we broke that record, got to 110. That was Sunday. The next day, we broke that record again, got to 114. And that I saw, at least in the Oregon part of the Portland metro area, because it's technically Portland-Vancouver metro area, the highest I saw was 114, and that was over here in the west side, basically Aloha, Hillsboro, Tennisbourne, Bethany. We're all right around 114 degrees. Portland, I think I saw, got the highest of 113. I know that Vancouver apparently got to 115, at least. And then there was Salem, who got to 117 degrees. 117 degrees. The wildest fact about that is that Las Vegas, Nevada, fucking Vegas, in the middle of the Sonoran Desert, their record throughout their entire recorded history is only 117. Salem, Oregon, tied Las Vegas's own heat record. Temperate rainforest, blazing hot desert. How the hell does that work? Like, what the hell? So, now that that's been said, let me get to another point of how wild that was. And it is that Las Vegas's own heat record is only 117 degrees for the record high in the middle of Sonora. Oregon's state record was set apparently way back in 1898 at 119 degrees. 2 degrees hotter than Las Vegas, Nevada. Just as a bird flies, what, like 40 miles at most east of the eastern edge of Death Valley, which is supposed to be the hottest place on Earth, and this record was set at 134 degrees for a high. 117 degrees is their record all time. Yet Oregon's state record was set at 119, 2 degrees hotter, despite the fact that one's in the middle of Sonora and the other one's at the far northern reaches of the high desert of the northern edge of the Great Basin. How the hell does that work? 119 degrees is the Oregon state record, set in 1998 on the same day, both in Prineville and in Pendleton. 2 degrees hotter than Las Vegas, Nevada. Again, next door to frickin' Death Valley. Like how the hell does it even happen? It doesn't even make sense. But the reason why I mentioned that is because of the fact that I think it's very convenient yet hilarious to be able to then state that global warming, though technically it exists as a possibility of happening, is not happening. That's very blatant. It's not happening at all. It's a fucking farce. They're lying through their teeth when they say, oh, it's global warming. No, it's global climate change. There is a big difference between climatic change, global climatic change, and global warming. Massive difference. In fact, pretty much all of the mainstream big climatologists, these are the supposed experts that you're supposed to listen to and believe implicitly, whatever they show you and tell you, all the time, that they show on the mainstream media, who all of the above I just mentioned are completely bought out and sold and controlled and dictated what they output, what they're supposed to say and do. Their charts that they've output on media is complete bullshit too, 99% of the time. Because they try to show pretty much every single part of the Earth is far warmer than it supposedly normally is every single year, and it keeps getting warmer on average, supposedly. And at most, they have the tiniest little spot in the middle of the Atlantic that's supposed to be colder than normal by the slightest margins, to fit the narrative of global warming, rather than more than anything climate change, which is horseshit. It's completely false. In fact, you can actually, I don't know if they've buried it by this point, they probably have, because for every time it starts to gain traction, they try to call these other climatologists complete liars and quacks, because it doesn't fit their narrative, because they're not bought out and they're not controlled, and they're getting too much traction, so they got to do damage control and try to get people to only believe what they want them to believe, their output, rather than these people who have contradicting charts. They have their own charts. They use actual history. They show statistics alongside of it that show and prove the fact that the charts you get shown in the media and by these other mainstream climatologists are complete frauds. They're intentionally manipulated into farcity, into delusion out of reality, because the true chart actually would show, and does show, the true ones, the real legit ones that they tried to say are quackery once they gain traction, are the ones that show not just there, which is a lot bigger, in the middle of the Atlantic, but on, I believe it's northeastern, it's either the southeastern or northeastern corner of Antarctica, is, has a pretty big spot that's actually quite a bit cooler than normal. And then also a large portion of northeastern Siberia is also, and that's not part of the Arctic Circle, is also far colder than normal every single year, and consistently staying that way while getting slightly colder pretty much each year. There's 3 fairly large spots on the Earth that are getting colder and colder, whereas there's other places, of course, that are either staying marginally around the same, or they're getting a fair amount warmer and drier. That's just, or even warmer and wetter. That's just a fact. And that is totally fucking normal. In fact, way back, I think it was like 2015, and sadly nowadays, to most people, that's way back. In 2015, I believe it was released and produced, either it was 2016, on a thing called Gaia, or Geisha, however you want to say that. There's a quantum scientist, and he's also, I can't remember, he's like, it has a bunch of different PhDs and titles and a bunch of different forms of scientific stuff. Anyway, Greg Braden, he had an entire thing he released on there. It should still be viewable. I remember when I watched that, it was profoundly interesting to watch because it was very memorable as well, because it actually shows the real reality and the real fact of what's really happening and how the world really works, and even how people work, because literally everything human and everything climate has been tracked for the longest time. They have, of course, the carbon dating. They have tons of other shit that proves to them what the climates have been like throughout all these different years, that help them form these statistical charts that prove that everything, including nature and the earth, go through cycles, and they're hard set cycles. So effectively, we're supposed to be exiting right through these basically this last year or two, we're supposed to be exiting a period of great peace for great wars, basically. So basically great, what do you call it? I'm going to call it instability and animosity. I can't quite remember what exactly the title was for it. That's socially with people, and that's governmentally and around the world. It's just supposed to be a period of unrest, I guess is what it would be. Extreme unrest. We're now entering, or exiting the peace and entering the unrest period. Because that's a hard set cycle. And then there's another hard set cycle, which is climatic change. This exact kind of climatic change that everybody around the world's experiencing and seeing is totally natural and normal. Could it be accelerated? There's always a chance. But actually, there's even a set of reports that came out a few years ago from Native American tribes from the Arctic Circle, so the Inuits, a bunch of different Inuit tribes from up in Canada in the Arctic Circle that came together and went and brought to even the mainstream media. I believe it was Washington Post, but I think it was Washington Post. Pretty sure. Anyway, one of the big media conglomerates over there on the northeastern corridor of the U.S., they came down for interviews and to help release an article that was giving people their literal long tenured history, because Native American, most tribes, they've always been so good at preserving their history and so good at chronicling about everything and documenting all the different changes and all the different places they've been and everything else. They've always been so good at that, and even preserving it through everything. And up there, they've done that. So they take all their experiences, they put them all together, and then they brought it down so that people could see it, and they could explain it to them that the way they see it, this is totally normal. It was expected, and it's not aggressive at all. It's not a bad case of climatic change. It's actually incredibly mild. We're not due for the severe one yet. That's a ways in the future. This is very, very fucking mild. And it's totally fucking natural and normal. this is actually perfectly on time. And they were basically, that's what they were trying to explain and point out. In other words, what the climatologists are trying to tell you right now, and your media and your government, is total horseshit. They're lying through their fucking teeth, and they're manipulating it so that they can use it to some kind of weird advantage. They didn't suggest that they were using it, manipulating or using it to advantage, but that's what that would prove. That's exactly logistically what that proves and what that points out. In other words, they're doing that because it counters what they were saying before, which then shows that they were lying. That's just the way it works. And I find that super, super funny to me because, of course, go figure, within less than 24 hours, that entire article and all other associated ones wiped off the face of the earth. All the tweets that were associated with it were deleted. All the posts on Facebook were deleted. The article itself suddenly didn't exist on the website. I even looked it up a few days later, noticed the tweets were gone, the posts on Facebook are gone. There's not even a trace on the fucking website that it existed. It just didn't exist. And so my tweet that linked it, by the way, also was still there, but the link didn't exist anymore. Who would have thought? Like, it's like, that's what they do. When something is 100% factually correct, they will take that shit down because it does not agree with the narrative they're trying to push. If it doesn't agree with it, because it's not lying, they will remove it. They will get rid of it. They will suppress it. They will do everything they can to avoid anybody noticing it, especially if it gains any kind of attention and traction with people. They will remove it as fast as they fucking can, because that is dangerous misinformation or whatever to them. That's what they try to claim it now. That's their new big thing, because they know shit abuse and all these other people are going to be like, yes, they're right, we trust you implicitly because we love throwing, you're dangerously misinformed and misinforming people. It's a very dangerous person, you're very dumb, to anybody who doesn't agree with them. So suddenly disappears. And they count on everybody forgetting, and that's exactly what everybody did. Except people like me, of course, who have a very hard time not hanging on to things desperately for a long time, because it's important sets of information to remember and to point out, including experiences like that. It's actually a lot like how everything one day in like summer of 2018, I believe it was, just suddenly flipped on Wikipedia. Everything from all these links and all these citations and all these resources and everything to documentation from different people from different nations, from people from in the nations in the Balkans that were directly involved in the wars and everything. Everything changed. All of that wiped out of existence, and everything went pro-Serbian suddenly in summer 2018. It just suddenly flipped. Complete opposite perspectives. And so it's just like, what the fuck? You know, like, they do that all the time. And I was always very interested in that region, so I was always very, very vocal about what all these different documentations of these people literally from there who lived through it directly in these places, let alone from elsewhere, neighbors or people that went to, people who lived in nations that went to war with them or whatever else. They all had all these different perspectives and information that they gave on not just the Balkan Wars in the 90s, but even throughout the 60s, 70s, including through the supposed time that now the current narrative is Croatia was a Nazi German puppet, which before that there was tons, and I mean tons, of citations and people that they used in citations of direct experiences from in those nations, even in Serbia and all these other places in the Balkans, places that were involved down there, places from Germany and Österreich and all that stuff. They all chimed in that lived through that, and they even said that narrative is total horseshit. Like that was never true. That was never the truth. Even a lot of Croats were saying that they don't know where that came from, but it's just simply false. That never happened. And yeah, I mean, like, they can just like that completely change history and all the documentation behind it whenever they want to, and it will just be done like that. And overnight, everything's changed. And people, for some reason, love to implicitly believe whatever the heck they are told by authority or by history. So that means that you can change history instantly, and people will just suddenly accept the changes. And they'll very quickly forget what was said before, and then they'll try to tell anybody who disagrees with that current perspective, oh, well, then you're misinformed, you're delusional, you're pulling shit out of your ass. Which is what they want, obviously. And so, yeah, and of course that's why I mentioned that, is because it reminds me so much of that, when it comes down to how they just so rapidly wiped out of existence any signs in any history, anything, any trace of those articles, those interviews with those Inuit tribes who came down and proved climatologists were lying through their teeth. So was the government, so was the media. None of the stuff now, let alone then, about the climatic change events or global warming was truth. It was all manipulated and falsified. And they had the real deal going on and disappeared. But I mean, this exact form of climatic change, it's totally natural, it's totally normal, and apparently it's weak as fuck. Like, this is one of the weakest, even those tribes actually in that article mentioned, this is one of the most pathetically weak climatic change events that they have in their own recorded history. Like, it's incredibly pathetically weak. These are the people that are up living, again, Native Americans living up in the Arctic Circle, where supposedly it's such dire straits for them because those such big ice melts and so abnormally warm, and yet they're like, this is weak. This is a weak, pathetic form of climate change. Like, it's natural, it's normal, it's on time, but it's one of the weakest we've experienced. Conveniently wiped out of existence like that because it was inconvenient to them, because it gained really quickly way too much attention and traction, started to get spread around a lot, and that meant it put their narrative under threat. So, gotta wipe it out of existence. So even though it seems like the summer will probably be averaging 90 plus most of the summer, which is about, 6 to 10 degrees hotter than average than we're normally supposed to average in the summertime for highs. It's still not global warming, it's just climatic change. It's totally normal. So, yeah. That's why I mentioned the records and then mentioned that, because if you started to claim, well, see, it's proof of global warming, or it's severe climatic change, it's not severe, it's normal, apparently, and history proves it, whether you want to believe it or not. But yeah. Anyway. That's it for today's political commentary. It's very, very different than normal, but it is still a political commentary, so hey, why not? So anyway, I hope you gained something from this. I hope you learned and enjoyed, and I hope to see you all later, whatever the next video may be. Thanks for stopping by. Leave your hate and disposition and anger in the comments, and I'll see you later. Goodbye. If I can click the right button, though.